What you just heard was some intro music. Yeah, we finally stepped up to the big leagues. Now, that wasn't our intended intro music, and we might wind up changing it, possibly on a weekly basis. This is what we're going with today. Due to the rights and whatnot, we kind of wanted 1 week by the Bare Naked Ladies to be our song, but we couldn't. So if you want the full experience, play the first couple of lines of that before listening to me talk now. So I should probably introduce us, huh?
Maybe.
So you're listening to the 6th episode of Mad and Mad at the Movies, the mediocre plate edition, to combat the Super Bowl that took place last week. We'd make up a funny name to go against tonight's Grammys, but we're kind of lazy. Maybe next week. I'm your host, Matt Parkinson, joined as always by Matt Garrell.
Howdy, Internet.
The films we'll be looking at today are Seventh Son, the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water, and Jupiter Ascending. But first, we've got a little bit of continuity to deal with. A couple of weeks back, we said we'd come up with a word that sort of means anti-auteur. Auteur almost always has a positive connotation. But there are filmmakers who I'd consider auteurs if the word also extended to trashy filmmakers. Hack doesn't really cut it. So Gerald and I each came up with a word we've decided to share with you, and we're actually going to let you vote on it. We'll let you know our social media stuff at the end, as we usually do, and let us know which one you like best. My submission is Hacktour, a portmanteau of hack and auteur.
Whereas I came up with the word fauteur because it basically makes me think of an auteur who is absolutely fake.
Like I said, we'll put it to a vote, so let us know in the comment sections and on social media. We'll reveal the results on next week's show, assuming anyone actually votes. Don't make me sad. The first film this week is Seventh Son. The long-delayed movie stars Ben Prince Caspian Barnes as Tom Ward, the seventh son of the seventh son, which apparently grants you superpowers. He's recruited by a spook played by Jeff Bridges in order to take down some evil creatures, the most powerful of which is a witch, played by Julianne Moore. Along the way, he falls in love with another witch, played by Alicia Vikander, because we need our obligatory love story. So, Gerald, how much did you love generic fantasy actioner number 632, Seventh Son?
This movie is so utterly generic that the only way you could make it even more would be if you took out Julianne Moore and Jeff Bridges and swapped them out for no-name actors, because, oh, good grief, is this movie generic? And
you know, for Jeff Bridges, that might actually help the movie.
Yeah, kind of.
Bad in this.
Well, he's not only bad, but it's like his accent is like he's impersonating Sean Connery with peanut butter in his mouth or something, because I'm like, what are you... I can't understand half of what he says.
And now, most of his purpose in the movie is to dump exposition on us.
Yeah.
And he mumbles the entire thing. It completely ruins all of the exposition.
What?
Exactly.
What did he say?
There were actually times in the movie where I stopped and went, what did he say? And I never figured it out.
Yeah, just like in his intro scene where he's drinking in that tavern, I'm like, half of what he says is incomprehensible. So bad.
And I mean, I didn't have any trouble figuring it out for the movie because it's so generic. It's so, we've been there, done that.
I mean, it's like it took Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces and basically just used that as a blueprint and plugged in the names, and that was it. Because it pretty much follows the hero's journey narrative beat for beat.
Now, it reminded me a lot of, well, for me, it felt like a Season of the Witch crossed with Aragon.
Pretty much.
That's
yeah.
not a compliment.
No, it's not. But yeah, it's pretty much, it's Aragon or Season of the Witch all over again, and neither of those were any good, so why are we doing this again?
And now, I find Aragon more watchable, at least because it's so bad that it's almost good. You know, those types of movies.
Yeah,
it's just boring.
No, like, I was contemplating falling asleep because it was just so boring to watch. I mean, the plot twists in this movie are so utterly obvious and telegraphed. I mean, there's the big one with the stone or whatever, and they telegraph it by doing the whole passing it from his mom to him thing. I'm like, well, that's going to come back later, obviously. So,
I kept wondering why I should care about any of this.
Well, you really shouldn't. I mean,
exactly.
the characters, as we've said, are bland and uninteresting. Like that romance subplot is so boring and lame and just unbelievable. Because like, okay, apparently he's seen her in visions and then having like 2 conversations with her, an instant romance, because this is apparently how romance works.
That's how it works in movies, don't you know that?
Well, it's how it works in movies. It's just unrealistic and uninteresting. And, I kind of would actually like to see actual character interaction that's actually meaningful. But,
And then Jeff Bridges is given this whole, she done wrong to me, so let's go kill her backstory.
How many times have I seen that one before?
Never. Not once.
Oh, wait. I mean, even like the most interesting part that I was hoping for was like the different powers or whatever that some of these things have, and they're boring. I mean,
they all turn into random creatures. And
or
do nothing.
Like dude who's supposed to be the master of the sword, and he gets beat by a character who's never picked up a sword before that we can tell. Yeah, the training montage that Ben
so
Barnes.
bad.
I'm like, I thought he was supposed to be training, and yet he really, really isn't. And yet he does the whole thing where on Monday he's completely useless, and then by Wednesday he's like the greatest fighter ever. Of course,
he can kind of throw a knife pretty well, so
except when he's not. And then there are at least 2 occasions where he takes this gigantic fall that he should have died from, and yet somehow he's perfectly unscathed with no scratches whatsoever.
And then we've got like the character of Tusk, completely pointless. Why is he in that?
Oh, he's supposed to be this funny comedic relief character, don't you know? I'm like,
but he's not at all.
I know. That's what I'm saying. They're trying and failing miserably at it.
I mean, this has been, like I said, long delayed. This was shot in 2012. It was supposed to be released in 2013, and now it's been dumped in February 2015.
Yeah.
Probably should have waited a bit longer, and by wait a bit longer, I mean sent directly to DVD.
I was going to vote for never at all, but okay, we could be charitable and say DVD.
Well, it could have been worse, which is the sad thing.
Yeah, I mean, especially
although if it was worse, it might have been better to watch at least.
Maybe. I mean, the CGI certainly isn't helping.
They spent like $70 million on this thing too, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's only made like probably going to make $7 million maybe at the box office this weekend, and then drop like a stone.
It's going to bomb.
Yeah, it's a bona fide flop for sure.
I mean, nobody's seen this anyway. We saw it because that's what we do.
Yay, us.
We suck. We shouldn't have done that. We should quit. This movie, that's how much this movie, it defeats people like me.
I wish it had defeated me, but it didn't quite.
I just feel like giving up.
Yeah, I've been there before too. This one didn't quite make me that depressed, but yeah, this was why.
Like I said, I would have liked it better, at least in terms of watchability, if it was a worse movie. It's just so boring. I hate boring movies.
Like if it was on the level of something like Labyrinth or like that,
or even Aragon, like I mentioned, that's at least
Dungeons and Dragons.
Left. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons.
Minus Jeremy Irons doing a very campy character.
Jeremy Irons should have been this instead of Jeff Bridges.
Actually, that would have been interesting. Yeah.
He would have hammed it up a bit more, like Julianne Moore. Julianne Moore hammed it up. She was bad in this, but at least she was kind of fun to watch.
Every time she makes one of those dramatic speeches to her minions, I wanted to laugh hysterically. Like, oh, Julianne Moore, you're probably going to win an Oscar here soon, and yet you're doing this campy thing. I'm like, why? So bad.
Ben Barnes is not a good lead.
No,
he's never been a good lead.
He's totally milquetoast. I mean, there's nothing to him. He's decently good looking, but I'm sorry, that doesn't make leading man material. You actually have to, act.
Oddly enough, I mean, most of the people in this movie are European. It's a fantasy setting, which means typically British accents. But we're all American here, except Jeff Bridges. And you're like, what are you doing, Jeff Bridges?
I don't know. I mean, his recent career has not been kind to him. I mean,
he did Crazy Heart, and then it just went all downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, R.I.P.D. and The Giver. And now this.
Now this. Well, this was before at least The Giver, but
Yeah, but
it's getting released later.
Either way, it's not helping his case.
No. He's another one of those, like Robert De Niro's taking a whole bunch of bad roles.
Yeah.
And Jeff Bridges isn't quite there because he doesn't work that often.
I'm amazed De Niro works as much as he does.
I know, but he's getting in that type of class. I mean, it's going to be direct DVD movies next.
Well, as long as he's got David O. Russell to give him a 5-minute cameo here and there, I'll at least get something major.
Yeah.
So
Jeff Bridges is a good actor, even.
yes, he is. I mean,
But he's just. What is he doing?
I don't know. Gone are the days of the dude, apparently.
That's what we should just do. We should just make a sequel to that.
I thought there was going to be a sequel to that at some point, but I don't know.
There was a 4-minute, like, I can't remember which internet channel did it, but a 4-minute quote unquote sequel to it that didn't have. I think it had one of the characters in it. But I don't think we're getting a full-blown sequel.
Nowadays, he's too busy making music for you to sleep by, if the commercial is any indication. Okay.
He's also making movies by which we can sleep.
Yep, because that's pretty much Seventh Son in a nutshell. Which, the Seventh Son thing is completely pointless, because it says he's supposed to make him superpowered, and yet it doesn't. And other than that, it's just like...
I think at one point Jeff Bridges was like, hey, you're going to be 10 times faster and stronger than most people. I'm
Yeah,
like,
he says
what?
that at the end of that training montage. It's like, I thought you were a seventh son of a seventh son. You're supposed to be 10 times stronger than this. I'm like, okay, there's no evidence to suggest that, so why...
You can just throw a knife kind of good.
Yeah.
I'll say this for it. At least it turned Jeff Bridges into a more believable action star than Taken 3 did for Liam Neeson.
This is true.
You can actually believe Jeff Bridges is doing most of the things he does in this.
Yeah, I can believe that too. I mean...
Like that bar fight, it wasn't a good bar fight, but at least you're like, hey, that's kind of Jeff Bridges doing that.
Yeah, the key is not beating him with the cup. The key is to not spill.
And then it was all downhill.
Yep. And if they make a sequel, there's no way this gets a sequel.
It's not getting a sequel.
There's no way. I mean,
It's not making enough money.
well, there are movies that have not made money that somehow have gotten sequels that I don't understand, but
It's not getting a sequel.
who knows? No. So, I have a question for you, Mr. Parkinson.
Yeah,
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
I'm not singing.
I wasn't singing.
It's not happening. That sponge fellow, that talking sponge. I think his name is Joe or John or Steve. Is it Sponge Steve?
That would be interesting, but no, it's SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh yeah,
I won't sing either, but yes. So, SpongeBob SquarePants, the movie, Sponge Out of Water, also decided to come out this week. So, what did you think of Mr. SquarePants' second theatrical entry?
It's just as good as the first one. I mean, we had one over a decade ago, which had, I mean, we've got Plankton stealing the Krabby Patty formula, and then in this one, Plankton tries to steal the Krabby Patty formula, but it gets taken by somebody else.
Gasp!
And then I thought it was interesting. It had like a meta narrative with Antonio Banderas reading the story of SpongeBob SquarePants, which was interesting-ish, but
It was somewhat interesting, but it still felt mostly shoehorned in and wasn't particularly original, because the whole meta thing of the author is writing the character's fates or something has been done a lot before. And then just that opening sequence where it's like exposition dumping everything on, who are these characters? I'm like, I'm sorry, if somebody's watching this movie, it's likely they know who these characters are, because either you're a parent of a kid who's seen this, so you know who these characters are, or you're a kid who knows who these characters are, because you've seen the show, or like me, you're an adult, but you grew up in a time where the show came out, so you saw the show, so you know who these characters are. I didn't need to know that, Gary was his pet snail. Like, okay, I already know who Gary is, thank you.
so I didn't have a big problem with that, because it gets it all out of the way really quick.
Thankfully, yes.
I mean, it's not a long, drawn-out, like, whole 10-minute thing dedicated to just learning who these are. It literally just goes, this is this guy, this is this guy, this is who this is. That's fine.
Yeah, that was at least helpful. And I mean, I think the thing that made me the happiest was the animation, that it was mostly the 2D animation underwater rather than the garish-looking CGI that we were getting in the trailer.
Which is a surprise because the trailer makes it seem like, well, not to spoil it, but the trailer kind of already did, like, the villain, we know who the villain is. Yeah. And it seems like he steals the Krabby Patty formula, like, instantly, like, right as the movie opens, and then the rest of the movie is taking place on land, trying to get it back. What you see in the trailer is basically all there is.
Yep. It's the third act, and that's it.
Yeah, most of the movie is actually, it's the 2D animation you've seen in the show, just slightly crisper. And actually we get time travel at some point, and we get a talking dolphin. And
Bubbles!
And then at the end we get this really weird rap battle thing that's like, I mean, you're talking about an acid trip and strange magic.
Well, the time travel sequences were the acid trip in this movie. The rap battle thing was not a... Although, so did you like that song?
No.
Really?
It was all awful.
I liked that song. I thought, like, especially because you had the annoying talking birds doing the actual theme song, and then Bubbles just randomly breaks in and starts doing a rap song. Like, I love this rap song. Why couldn't this song have been more throughout the movie? I mean, it's certainly
better than the other song.
Yeah, that teamwork song. Oh, it's so, especially because it made me long for Everything Is Awesome all over again. I'm like, no, stop singing.
One thing I'll say about the SpongeBob movies, both of them, is that they have very, very simple themes. This one's all about teamwork. I mean, at the end, when they get onto land, they team up Avengers style and to take down the villain.
Yeah, and Patrick with his ice cream superpowers.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Krabs is Iron Man.
Yes.
Plankton is the Hulk.
Actually, yeah, that's true.
I don't... Sandy turns into an actual squirrel, which was kind of fun.
That was the creepiest of them, though, because
it did look weird.
That was the worst of the CGI that they did, for sure.
Yeah.
But and then the animation inside of SpongeBob's brain was like the creepiest thing I've seen all year.
That was so weird,
especially because they rip off the twins from The Shining, except it's a like a ice cream bar. I'm like, stop it!
It's like, get us before we melt, and you're like, this is too creepy.
Yeah, and then, okay, I guess that was a joke thrown in for the adults, because I'm like, yeah, kids aren't going to know that that's a reference to The Shining.
You would hope not.
Well, yeah, I would certainly hope not. The humor, I think mostly works for me. I had several good laughs in the movie. Now, it doesn't always work, because it kind of falls back on, like, bodily humor jokes, especially, like, with the birds or whatever, but...
It's a very throw everything at the wall and hope a lot sticks. It's
yeah.
what the SpongeBob things have all been for me. They throw a lot of jokes at you, which is, at least they're trying.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be overbearing a little bit, but frankly, I think the rapid-fire nature of the jokes ends up helping, because it means that there's at least more funny jokes, even if there's also more misses.
Yeah, no, I wasn't complaining.
Yeah, okay.
For people who somehow inexplicably have avoided SpongeBob for the last, decade and a half it's been on.
Yeah, 16 years since 1999.
Wow, that's a long show.
Yeah, although I will say I do think this movie probably would have been better just if it was like 2 episodes of the show, 45 minutes long, rather than a half hour, or the hour and a half that it was. But all in all, I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was all right.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible.
Better than Seventh Son by a wide margin.
It's definitely, if you're gonna have to see something and you're not gonna see our final movie, and you have kids, I guess, SpongeBob's, it's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad choice, especially if you have kids.
Yeah. So our final movie of the week is Jupiter Ascending, which is likely going to be the one we're going to talk about the most.
Just a bit.
The plot is... I'm glad
incomprehensible.
I got saddled with the plot here. So bear with me a little bit. Essentially, it's a movie that takes a maid from Earth named Jupiter Jones, played by Mila Kunis, and puts her in the middle of a sibling rivalry. Now, this isn't any sibling rivalry. I mentioned she's from Earth because most of the movie takes place in space. As it turns out, humans are far older than we think and inhabit many different planets in the universe. Smaller planets like Earth are owned by people. Now, Jupiter Jones is the reincarnation of someone who used to own Earth, and the original actually put it in her will that if someone got reincarnated, then she would inherit it, and the siblings aren't too happy about that, so they're all fighting over it. And Gerald, did I miss anything?
Well, there's the whole splicing thing of all these different creatures. Let's see. Well, considering the number of times that basically this is a gigantic series of Chekhov's guns that are set up to, and then some of them don't even go off. It's like the plot isn't comprehensible 90% of the time because it's just so convoluted. I mean, you can tell that they have a lot of ideas to put into it. It's just somebody needed to tell them, okay, no, this idea is fine. This idea can stay over here. Maybe go make another movie about it or something. I mean, they managed to pull off multiple ideas in a movie with Cloud Atlas, but
they being the Wachowskis, because we haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah, Andy and Lana Wachowski, we got to give props to them because, I mean, it's interesting. It's just so convoluted.
I feel like, I mean, this was supposed to be out last year. It got delayed almost 10 months. They said to finish the special effects. My guess is it was to finish editing it. I'm guessing that it got cut down from probably something closer to Cloud Atlas's length.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there.
And I think it would have worked better like that, or as like a 3-part miniseries.
Yes, I would. Like, my favorite example to go to is Dune, because like the original Dune film from the 80s is absolutely terrible, but then the Sci-Fi Channel made a 3-part miniseries of it, and it actually was really good. So this would have been immensely better if it had been like 2 films or a 3-part miniseries or something, rather than trying to put this into a 2-hour film, because there's too much stuff.
There's too much exposition. I mean, it feels like 75% of this movie is just trying to explain the movie to us.
Yeah.
And explain this universe, and it's so richly crafted, it's so dense, and yet we don't really get to explore it until like the end.
Yeah, I mean,
and even then.
It's a very broad film, but it's a very shallow film, for sure. And unfortunately, that extends in a lot of ways to the characters, because, I mean, Jupiter Jones is weak, gullible, and largely boring, in my opinion. I mean, I think Channing Tatum's character, Kane Wise, I mean, he's okay. But
Kane Wise. That's right up there with Cypher Rage.
Not as bad as Cypher Rage. It's goofy, but it's not as bad as Cypher Rage. I'm sorry. I mean, well, actually, no. The one that from this movie that compares to Cypher Rage is Stinger from the Sean Bean character. Because, like, oh, bees, and your name is Stinger. I wonder.
Oh, that bees scene! It's gonna rank right up there with the one from the Wicker Man.
No, not the bees, not the bees. Oh gosh.
It's gonna be somehow they're gonna splice that together. People on YouTube, they're gonna splice those 2 scenes together somehow.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that, and then Sean B says like, bees don't lie, and bees are genetically designed to sense royalty. And like, no, not the bees. So,
there are a lot of laughable lines in this movie.
My bowels are definitely not royal. This is an actual line in this film, listeners.
It's an actual line in the movie. Yeah,
yes. For context, they're about to jump through basically hyperspace, and Channing Tatum gives some water and a pill to Mila Kunis to help set her stomach or whatever, and she responds, well, my bowels are definitely not royal.
Yep, that's a thing that happened.
And apparently women keep maxi pads in the car at all times, I guess.
Well, yeah.
No.
That whole part was just
so ludicrous. I mean, the funny thing is we talked about the exposition, and yet the film is not really as smart as it thinks it is, with all this stuff that it goes on to with like seeding of the earth and harvesting. It's like it's a retread of The Matrix all over again.
Yeah, the whole thing is that the people who own the planets let them grow to a point of overpopulation, and then they harvest them using the humans as not fuel, but as some sort of thing that they can bathe in, and then their genes get reborn or whatever, so that they can live forever.
Silent green, silent green, silent green. I mean, I think they actually basically make a line where she says this stuff is basically made of people, right? And I was like, thank you for being so on the nose about that one.
So it's all about consumption.
Yeah, how many times have I seen that one before?
Never.
I mean, the sad thing is the action sequences are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, that opening one where they're flying around Chicago and whatever, that's a beautiful action scene. I love that.
Great chase scene.
Yeah, really good.
And I mean, Channing Tatum gets these awesome hover boot things and this great shield that he can just pop out of nowhere. And the action's good. It's a really pretty movie.
Yeah, the visuals are stunning on this. I mean, mostly. There's the character designs of the lizard guys and some of the other Splice characters
That's
are
true.
Pretty awful. But largely, the visuals in this film are really, really good. So I give them props for that. And I mean, it's certainly an ambitious film, so they certainly deserve credit for that. It's just the plot and the characters are so... And we haven't even talked about Eddie Redmayne yet.
I was just about to get into him.
He
seems so out of place in this movie.
He seems out of place or his character seems out of place in any movie, basically. I mean, what is he doing here?
He's the main villain. He's the evilest of all of the siblings, and it's very hard to explain what Eddie Redmayne is in this.
Well, I mean, he's simpering and he talks in a low voice like this, and he's trying to be threatening, except when he gets really, really loud and yelly, and then he's back to being low again. And I'm like, dude, you are so lame. And then it's not helped that his brother and sister aren't exactly good. I mean, the sister, she shows up, has like 2 scenes to
and
show
then
off.
disappears for the entire rest of the movie.
Exactly. It's like, where'd she go? And then
I'm guessing she was cut out in post.
I
really
guess.
think so.
I mean, and then the brother, he's especially so. I mean, he's got a PG-13 orgy bubble room. I'm like, what is going on here? And then it's really depressing to see Gugu Mbatha-Raw in this as his kind of like lackey, basically, because it's like, I mean, this woman had amazing performances in Belle and Beyond the Lights last year, and yet here she's just kind of generic lackey that is there for like 2 scenes and has maybe 3 lines of dialogue, and that's it. And Terry Gilliam, what on earth? That movie, that scene breaks the entire movie.
It's all about the bureaucracy of the...
I mean, it's supposed to be funny, and I'm like, this is not funny. It's
like, a Brazil homage.
I know it's a Brazil.
I know. I'm explaining to them.
Yeah, it's just... Why is it in this movie? Other than, I mean, I know again it's an homage, but no, it doesn't need to be here. I mean, the Terry Gilliam homage in Snowpiercer was better than this. At least that one was just a guy's name and had John Hurt, and rather than being actual Terry Gilliam and making an homage to a Terry Gilliam film.
And it didn't feel as out of place as this one does. Like,
no kidding. Wow.
I mean, it's a complete tonal shift for one scene.
I mean,
it goes from what?
Dramatic, and action to comedy. Which, speaking of completely out of place, her Earth family is completely pointless.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to cut something out, cut them out.
I'm guessing part of it was cut out, and that's why it feels that way. I mean, like, there's this whole thing about her cousin, I think, trying to get her to sell eggs so that he can buy this TV. You're like, what?
I mean, all that does is just emphasize how gullible and stupid she is. And like,
I know.
And this is our main character, people.
And she doesn't really want to be royalty. She just wants to eventually save her family and save the Earth. And
I mean, that's noble.
It kind of works, but only it would have worked a lot better if her family actually, came across as decent, even.
Yeah, decent. Not at all. And then I'm still trying to figure out. Okay, like, why was her dad killed at the beginning? I mean, it's owed money, but or the mother was supposedly owed money. I'm like, but who are these people? Are they supposed to be like mobsters or what?
I'm guessing so. I think it was just something to make sure she didn't have a father figure.
It's like, are they trying to rip off Disney? Because, I mean, that's Disney's shtick.
Well, I felt like, and then they make a Cinderella reference later.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, is she supposed to be kind of a Cinderella parallel? It's a rags to riches kind of story.
That's not the parallel you want to make, because, like...
No.
They should never write romance ever. The romantic dialogue in this movie is so terrible.
I have more in line with a dog than I do with you. I've loved dogs. I've always loved dogs. And you're just like, what?
Like, that leads me to think about things that I really didn't want to think about. And then Channing Tatum's wings. What? Those things are terrible. The CGI is so bad on those two.
Which is weird because the rest of the CGI is so good.
I know. Well, other than the lizard people.
Well, yeah.
Lizard people's bad too. Well, and then elephant pilot dude.
Hey, the lizard guys were still better than the lizard guy from Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay, that I will grant you. That I will grant you. I mean, even just the score in this movie feels heavy-handed. And that depresses me because it's Michael Giacchino. And I mean, I love Michael Giacchino stuff. I mean, it makes WALL-E beautiful, and yet it's the same sort of grand, epic space type of music, and yet here it's just like, we are being epic, we are being epic. I'm like, no, you're not.
And almost all of the suspense in this movie was the same. It's, let's race to this person before this person can do something. It's all time related, and
well, it's like I said, it's a repetitive series of Chekhov's guns, and yet and only some of them go off, and it's like, well, thank you for... Which, for the listeners, a Chekhov gun is a literary device where you set something up at the beginning, and then it ends up paying off later, which may seem boring, but more often than not it works. But here, when you're just doing it over and over again, no. It doesn't work.
And yet, I can't say it wasn't at least somewhat fun.
Yeah, it's
I mean, of the movies this week... It's probably the one I'd most want to see. Especially if when it hits home video, it gets a longer cut.
Yeah,
I'll be very interested in seeing if there's like a 45-minute Kingdom of Heaven style director's cut.
Yeah.
That's something I want to see.
If we were making that as a caveat as to what I would watch again, I would probably rather watch this than anything else. I think, for me personally, I think the SpongeBob movie was better this week, just for me, but in terms of rewatchability, I would rather watch, again, as you said, a director's cut of Jupiter Ascending, especially if it makes more sense. There's no guarantee of that, and more often than not, director's cuts do not work at all. But yeah, if it's like Kingdom of Heaven, then we'll at least get a better film than what we got in theaters. So one can only hope.
Now, just before we wind up wrapping up, I've got a shout out to a movie that hit VOD and limited release this week, and that's The Voices, which is a black comedy starring Ryan Reynolds, and he kind of inadvertently becomes a serial killer, thanks mostly because his cat tells him to. That's about all I'm going to say about that. Just see it. It's better than anything else that's coming out this week.
Well, all right then.
That brings...
Evil talking cat, yay.
Scottish evil talking cat, too, with Ryan Reynolds doing the Scottish accent.
Oh, good grief.
It's hilarious.
See, if you had just said evil Ryan Reynolds Scottish talking cat, I would think you were insane, but...
Well, now the movie's a little bit insane.
Apparently. It's like, okay, better or worse than Bad Lieutenant Port of Call New Orleans in that department?
Well, it's a more extended sequence of that, so I'm going to say better.
Well,
and it's more than just the lizard.
It's
got a cat, a dog, a deer, and I think a monkey too.
Well, that sounds interesting.
That brings us to the conclusion of the 6th episode of Mad at the Movies. You can follow Garrell on the Twitter at FilmFlashNC. I'm also on the Twitter at MurderTweet. Like we said earlier, send us your comments, criticisms, praise, suggestions, and vote for which fake auteur you want. Next week we'll have two polar opposites when it comes to theatrical releases. On one hand, we have the action comedy Kingsman: The Secret Service, and on the other we have this erotic drama that all the women will want to see for Valentine's Day, 50 Shades of Grey. Yes, we're going to have two straight men discussing 50 Shades of Grey. Tune in. Until next time, this is Mad at the Movies signing off.
Take care, Internet.